Hey, it's Matt Pinfield. It's KLOS New and Approved, and I'm here with Chris Robinson of the Black Crowes. And I'm really happy to have you here, Chris. We're here to talk about this new EP, which just, of course, immediately I was excited about before I even knew what tracks were on it. 1972, the EP, and then was completely happy and not in any way disappointed with the songs that you guys picked for this EP.
Yeah, cool, thanks. I mean, it's tough, there's so many great songs from that year, and so many great records were made. It's kind of like, for me, it's always been a special year because it's also like the last gasp of whatever the revolution was supposed to be, whether that was, LSD and Eastern religion, ending the war, all these like radical ideas that are being spawned by the youth. By 1972, that wave is like crashed and it's just the wreckage,
Yeah.
And then the next chapter begins in the counterculture. But I think part of that is why there's so much great music, you know what I mean? Because we know that wave crashing, I think, is a dynamic event, and that's, ideally when I first heard about it, I was like, but then when we got in there, I was like, we knew what songs we were going to play. Then, Rich wanted to do, Rocks Off, the Stones song first. And I was like, we just are going to start with like the holiest of relics. This is like John the Baptist toe bone or something.
Yeah.
We must take it out and show everyone in the village. But we did it, and that was it. It set the pace for, like, how fun it was, how, like, the groove was good. And, it brings back around all these things about the Black Crowes, our influences, where we start with Shake Your Moneymaker, these sounds and stuff, and just kind of brings it full circle, in a real authentic way. It's the only way we either stumble into the Garden of Eden or we fall off the cliff. That's the only way the Black Crowes works. We're not that clever. You know what I mean?
But I love that you do that. I mean, you look the great covers you've done over the years. Whether it was, it was so cool that 30 Days in the Hole came out on the anniversary special edition of Shake Your Moneymaker. I was so happy to see that because Steve Marriott's another guy that when I think of some of the greatest singers and singers that were cool and had swagger like yourself, he's definitely up on that list for me.
Yeah,
as well.
I just think it's it's like anything else. As time goes by, we were talking about it. I think part of I'm happy to be a part of a group that has records that are being played on the radio all the time. But in the same respect, all of those great singers, you know what I mean? It's just not a part of the sound anymore. And it really wasn't when I came up. Like I didn't even really think about, I didn't know who I knew 30 Days in the Hole from rock radio, but I wasn't like a 70s connoisseur. We were punk kids and new wave kids and indie college radio kids. That's what they would call us. But when our sounds, at first I thought the Black Crowes, we pretty much sounded like a mix between like the Gun Club and REM, like a more rougher kind of folkier REM in a weird way.
Right, which are both two great bands.
But you know what I mean? So like if I had to think about it, but when our sound progressed and we started letting like these roots music things, and then when, especially George Dekulias, who signed us and produced our record, when I remember specifically him bringing over a Faces record, Not As Good As a Wink, and playing me Miss Judy's Farm, and just like, it was like lightning crack. Like the way the guitars sound, the way the groove was, the way Rod Stewart sounded, I was like, this isn't anything. I know the music was old, but to us in our scene of like, the Replacements and The Cure and, Circle Jerks or whatever, whatever. Or other LA bands, whatever that was, there was something about the crackle of that song and the energy and the way all that stuff came together. I was like, wow, this is rad. You know what I mean? Like, and this is kind of, again, like starts to bring in all these elements, so when we start to make a record like this, again, it's just like, it highlights why we loved that stuff, like, dude, in 1988, 9, and when we're listening to something like You Wear It Well or listening to Never a Dull Moment, the Rod Stewart record, or his solo records, it wasn't like cool at a party to put that on.
Yeah, right,
you know what I
exactly.
mean? It was like Jane's Addiction was cool. This isn't cool, and Jane's Addiction still is cool, but this was cool too. So you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just a funny thing to get into. But that brought, when we're in there, that brings up a lot of other stuff too. Like, wow, like You Wear It Well, a little pop song, but that Rod Stewart wrote.
Yeah.
But it's a genius little song with little melodies. The lyrics are amazing.
The lyrics are incredible. Like at the end too, when he says, "After all this, hope it's the same address." It's like that one line about him writing the letter. It's just even his sense of humor comes out in that song.
I like when she talks about, your brother's karate. You know, like at the house, your brother's like doing karate.
Yeah.
Like so good.
There's a great sense of humor in there, and so
great craft. The songwriting is you're making records at a time where it's not producer driven industry. It's not a conglomerate. It's not watered down for mass consumption. It's not there's a lot more angles to be played on that table. And within that, the talent, the Beatles have just broken up. Bob Dylan is still in his like mighty pen, Led Zeppelin stalks the land, Deep Purple, Queen is starting, Aerosmith is starting. Multitude of other groups, the whole country rock thing, and so how that builds up something too is like, wow, you really have to have craft, you know what I mean? You have to be able to say something with your composition that's different than just, oh rad, we're on a commercial or whatever.
Yeah, exactly, and it was a great time. Now speaking of Rich wanting to do Rocks Off. I mean, like you said, that from that Exile on Main Street, what a great album. Dude, I always loved when you were doing shows, when he would kind of tease us by starting with the riff from Star Star and then go into It's Only Rock and Roll.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And I would think he was going to start, all of a sudden you were going to bust
we
into
stole
Star
that. I love the It's Only Rock and Roll version on
Love You Live. Yeah.
That's the one. It's in a different key too. I think it's in E, and the Stones record version's in B or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, with those backup vocals at the end. I mean, that's we've always wanted to pay homage to like the things that inspire us and that that make us excited. Just what I mean?
Yeah. And I think with Rocks Off, it's one of the best Stones songs and album openers. They have a lot of great ones, but that's one of their best, and a song that doesn't get the exposure that it deserves to get.
I mean, I don't think it was, it was people forget now Exile on Main Street is like this thing, but when it, that record came out, it didn't get great reviews. People didn't like the way it sounded. The Stones, I think people thought it was too long. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There wasn't like something clear and concise like Sticky Fingers or even Let It Bleed.
Yeah.
So, which is funny to us, maybe that's why I always liked it, the most, because I was also such a Birds freak, Flying Burrito Brothers, Graham Parsons freak. And so, Graham Parsons, like, I'm kind of like, oh, wow, this is like this whole cosmic American music, but by these English dudes who are like in the second most famous rock and roll band of all time.
Yeah.
So it's always, and still, like, when I put it on, there's something magic about it. It's always a mood enhancing record. I think all great music is, but there's something about Exile on Main Street that's like, people who are into that record, and who are really into that record are always like my kind of people.
Yeah.
And the way it's a great jumping off point for lots of other things,
Yeah, it really is. There's so many other influences in there. I also love that when you decided to do a Bowie track, you covered Moon Age Daydream and brought it into there was a different level of grit that you brought to it, which I loved. So
that was like the other thing is we're not going to deconstruct these songs too much and try to make something, out of. I like bands that can do that.
Yeah.
I think like I said, we just wanted to like honor these songs and get into them, but have a few little things. And like Moon Age Daydream, when, you know, I was listening to the track and they do all those big dramatic things in the studio. Bam, bam, I'm an alligator. Da, da. And then they go back around and they do it again. Da, da, and they have these big spaces. And my only idea to change anything was, instead of having those, let's do it the first time because that's the big hook of the song. But then when we get to the next one, let's just like do the Stooges in there. Or Velvet Underground or whatever.
Yeah.
And say, okay. It'll just give it a different energy for us in the studio as well. We're not Tony Visconti. We don't have the kind of time and Mick Ronson and to, do this epic thing. So we can make ours just a little looser and just a little more rockin' in that way.
Yeah. Is that one of your favorite Bowie albums, Ziggy?
Yeah. I mean, I think Hunky Dory is really my favorite. Well, I don't know. All those first ones are good. Man Who Sold the World is probably the one I listen to the most when I think about it. But I like everything, I love Station to State. I mean, they all are great.
They're all great records, yeah.
Especially this early 70s period. I like the production. They just sound delicious. You know what I mean? They sound like something you want to sink into.
Yeah.
And very sensual that way, which I like.
Yeah, the production really holds up. Ken Scott's production, Tony Visconti. So those records are just... The
guitars sound cool. The drums sound amazing. I mean, it's also Mick Ronson was a real studio whiz genius, almost like in the same way Jimmy Page was. You know what I mean? Maybe more in a pop way than a rock way. But
after he did, after later on he did like Pure Prairie League Amy, and he did like
Jack and
Diane, right? Which is wild.
So weird. I didn't know that, and then I listened to it, and it's like, and then he works with the Smiths too.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you listen to Jack and Diane later, I was like, of course, there's all those things in it. You know, those big guitar things and starts and stops and little rhythmic things. It's rad. Yeah.
It really is. I also love that you covered the Slider, the title track from that T-Rex album from '72.
Yeah, another I couldn't imagine being interested in rock and roll without Mark Bolan. Whether it's John's Children or Tyrannosaurus Rex and T-Rex. I even will go on a YouTube dive and watch the Mark Bolan show where he's like really out of control, you know, and he's like, "These are my friends, Hawkwind."
Yeah. When you see,
there's great bands on there. Like he had the raddest stuff.
Yeah, he put Generation X on there, and they were actually not going to let them play because their instruments weren't there on time. And he said, "If they don't play, I don't play." And he told the producers,
he had cool stuff.
The Damned he had on, right? And Boomtown Rats had a bunch of people that were back then. It was pretty cool that he was trying.
And Hawkwind.
Yeah, and Hawkwind. Yeah.
So yeah, but the Slider, like to me, a perfect sounding record on that album. When the and he revisits that a couple times in his repertoire, but when that that Les Paul sound comes in, it's just always been my favorite. And the whole idea of when I'm sad, I just slide,
Yeah.
And we grew up listening to that record when we were Mr. Crow's Garden. I lived in a house with this other band called Marry My Hope, and Sven, our bass player, was in Marry My Hope, even though we all rehearsed in the house, and it ended up being just like this flop house for young
musicians.
Dirtbags. Or dirtbags is better than musicians, probably. And that would just be one of those records that we bonded over forever, and rarely a weekend would go by where that record's not played a couple times from start to finish. That would be the thing about if we're gonna do we have to try the Slider.
It was cool to do that. Enough people have done Bang a Gong, so it's like, and that Slider's just a great track. It's an album track, non-single, and like you said, all the stuff on that record, Baby Strange, Telegram Sam, Ballrooms of Mars,
Jeepster, incredible song.
So many great ones, but I love that you did that. It's all about covering Little Feat too.
Easy
to Slip, which you guys did from Sailing Shoes. So.
Another great lost idol. I wish more young musicians and writers, would understand or get into what Lowell was doing. All of Little Feat's incredible, but he really was the spark. He was, And I just think his writing, his playing, he was so out of the box, so soulful, so groove oriented, but yet always with this like something else about it. In this case, Rich and I love that song. And when we thought about, Sailing Shoes came out in 72, I was like, this would be a perfect song for Rich to sing, and I think he sings it so beautifully. And I'm, it's that song is perfect for his voice, We have, like everything in our lives, our voices are complete opposite.
Yeah.
His is very controlled and pretty, and mine not so much.
But it came out great, and it's cool. Old George and the guys in that band were just
fantastic band. And again, I get like, I get where people would, where they change a lot too as a band right after that record.
Yeah.
Their sound and stuff. So I think, again, as time moves on, it seems like certain bands get forgotten or something.
Yeah.
Especially, like you said, they're not really, while where would you hear? They weren't big on the radio then.
They weren't, yeah. You might
where
hear
would
Dixie
you-
Chicken, that's it. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
later.
Yeah, later.
Or then in the 90s, they had like some kind of adult,
Yeah.
contemporary kind of records.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? So unless you're really digging, sometimes you're not going to get everything.
Yeah.
And I get it. Some people, some people don't like Korean barbecue because you have to cook your own food. I get it.
Yeah.
I understand completely. I mean, I don't understand not liking Korean barbecue or digging for records.
Yeah.
So I take it back. I don't understand at all.
Especially guys like you and I, because we've had these conversations before where you've always been a guy who's been looking for new music when you were a kid. You were looking for different
Yeah, I've
things
been.
to check out.
It's not just records. I've
Yeah.
been collecting records since I was 12 years old. All sorts of you know what I mean? Like every genre you can name. That's my wife and I, Camille. We DJ together. We have the best DJ name of all time.
What is it?
The Captain and Camille.
It's a great name. That's genius. Now, do you just DJ at home, or do you actually DJ?
No, we DJ we DJ like lots of gigs and like clubs and. When we were living in Telluride, we'd go on the little radio station up there and take over my friend's show, and it'd be like, guess what? We're not, no granola music is about to be played for 3 hours.
Yeah.
So I hope everyone.
And you pull out Sex Beat by the Gun Club
Yeah,
or something
totally,
like that.
totally.
You know what I mean?
Or what?
It's
Yeah,
just
exactly.
But I love that. I would definitely want to come to a gig you did or listen to you on the air.
Yeah. We, you know what? It's music. It's the same thing. It's funny. Like I know lots of musicians who aren't obsessed with music. They're, you know what I mean, which is totally fine. I'm upset. I'm obsessed with music. I am a musician and a songwriter, but I love records. I love, we were at Cruel World last night, sitting there in the insane energy that was Bauhaus. It was like the
great.
best show.
Saturday.
It was one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was incredible. And he looks great. When he's like bald head now shaved.
He was like, it was like post-apocalyptic King Lear from some other planet. It was so good. I couldn't believe how good it was.
It was. And did you go into the
and I knew they're Bauhaus. They're going to be rad. It doesn't matter. But I was ill prepared for how heart-stoppingly genius it was.
It was. I saw it on the night before, and it was the same thing.
Yeah.
It was incredible. The set list was great, and they sounded incredible the whole time.
Thank God they didn't make a record in '72 because I don't know if we could possibly do them justice.
Yeah. But, it was, so speaking of records, there was a record Safari, which is my friend's record store. He had like a tent there with records. Did you go through any
I
of
didn't
those?
make it over there. No,
Yeah.
cool. I should have.
Yeah.
That's all I need is to be lugging around records at a festival.
Yeah, well, that's the reason I don't buy them there is because of the
I
heat.
did it in Germany, though, when my solo group, we were on tour a few summers ago, and we played this. It's the oldest festival in Europe. It's in Germany. It's been going on since 1969. Its name is totally escaping me, so I apologize. But it's one of the coolest events I've ever been to. The craziest lineup of stuff. super like anarchists and hippies and communal blah 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 blah, acid people and blah blah blah. And in the middle of it all, there was like a whole row of people selling records, and I love like all the ear records and krautrock records and all those. And I was like, oh, I went crazy. They had everyone there that I was looking for.
And German pressings of them. Because
of course, original ones. And they're a little more expensive than, I guess, the average punk rock kid was going to pay at the festival. But I was a bougie rock and roll guy. I'm like going big. I was like walking out of there with a giant stack of like.
Yeah. And plus, if you're like me, I mean, that's what I love to spend my money on is records. That's what I do.
Yeah,
you know?
records and books. And
books and things like that. You know, speaking of which, I know you like stuff from, we talked about all the different genres we like. And in that year of 72, there was so much great soul music and R&B out at the time, too, which was incredible. So on the CP, you covered Papa Was a Rolling Stone. Talk to me about the decision to do that.
Trying to find something that, again, that wasn't too obscure and something that would be, just, again, like, it wouldn't be our job to recreate Papa Was a Rolling Stone. It's like a masterpiece of recording. It's an R&B masterpiece with the strings and the arrangement and the whole story that it tells. And like I wanted to pick it up more in just like a funk place, rock and roll place. So there's only one singer really. So we're not going to do all the vocal acrobatics, which are beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm the one who I said, let's add that backbeat in the chorus because it's not on the record. And that gives it a little shape like a rock and roll song.
Yeah.
And then it was just, I mean, we honestly played it 2 times and it just was really nice. We played it once and then I grabbed a harmonica. So, I mean, pretty much the whole thing is one take. You know what I mean? Like all the everything. We did a couple little overdubs. I don't even think I sang. I maybe sang one other take and we maybe used something, but. Yeah, just one of those things, you know, like I love the Temptations. I love vocal groups like that. I mean, the Temptations are the, inspiration for Sly and the Family Stone. The way their vocals are done, their inspiration to the Parliaments, George Clinton is his vocal group with Parliament and then Funkadelic. So
that whole lineage and how great all that stuff was, without a question.
And it goes back before them into like all sorts of other music and stuff. So
like doo-wop and vocal groups from that period. Yeah.
And I mean, you don't want to go to a party where someone sometime in the night isn't going to play a few Coasters songs. I mean, you're not with the right people. You know what I mean?
You got to play those fun records.
It's like if I'm at a party and I've been there for a few hours and it's going good and someone doesn't play the Coasters or Dragging the Line by Tommy James and the Shondells, I don't really want to stay in your house. I mean, it's time to go. Not even. I get Crimson and Clovers for the late night people.
Yeah. But Dragging the Line is such a great groove. It's one of the best grooves ever,
of all
right?
time. I mean, it's the best.
It just is. It's amazing. Tommy solo. That's great. So you still, like you said, you still buy records a lot. And when you were, I have to ask you this. So when you first discovered like the punk and new wave thing, and you were young, you were a pretty young teenager around that time.
Yeah.
What were the first things that you were listening to in that period?
Well, I mean, it was funny because I went pretty much from, I mean, I had Byrds and Bob Dylan and my dad's folky things. But for a long time, I would only really listen to black radio, V103 FM in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And this is kind of right when hip hop is getting off the ground. But, Atlanta has Cameo, Lakeside, SOS Band.
Gap Band, things like that.
Yeah, I just met Charlie Wilson on an airplane, and I was like honored to meet him.
Yeah, so great, those guys.
So that kind of second generation of that 80s funk was really a big part of like just my musical thing. And it's so funny, there was a great television program emanating from Los Angeles, California, hosted by the great Peter Ivers. And by the time I saw it, it was on USA Night Flight, and it was called New Wave Theater.
Yeah.
So at this time, like the Clash would be a band that I would like, had like the first Clash record, The Jam.
Yeah.
But then New Wave Theater comes on, and I'm seeing Dead Kennedys and X and The Plugs and 45 Grave and, like
Psychobilly
Suburban Lawns and lots of groups, circle jerks, and just like, it'd come on at 2 a.m. on Saturday nights. And it was, by that time my parents had made the horrible decision to move to the suburbs. And I love you, Mom and Dad. That was a bad decision.
Yeah.
Or was it? Because I wouldn't have so much suburban angst that I would appreciate this kind of programming. But yeah, it blew my mind, like all this kind of stuff going on in LA and the West Coast. And, I was really into beat literature. So there was a kind of a connection to the beats. I don't know why. I guess because it was more literary or something.
Yeah.
That's why I loved Slash Record. I loved the Flesh Eaters and X and Gun Club, and there was something more literate about those groups too.
It really was. Did you, when you first time you went to San Francisco, did you go into the bookstore and get some
Of
great beat
course.
stuff?
I mean, I lived in Marin, and every time we go get Chinese, I go to City Lights.
It's funny. I lived right on Grant and Vallejo in Paul Cantor's old apartment after he passed away. I lived there for a while.
I met him at the coffee place.
Yeah,
right
Cafe Trieste.
Yeah, I met him there one time when I used to be completely addicted to 9 espressos a day.
Yeah,
but he came out, because Blows Against the Empire is one of the top LSD records ever made. It's an acid masterpiece. Yeah. And I'd never met Paul Kantner. I have a encyclopedic memory of all people and record, blah, blah, blah. That's like in my wheelhouse. But I usually don't bother anyone. But I was like, I have to say hi and tell him how much I love this record. Because it's, And I was like, oh, Mr. Cantor, my name's Chris. I sing in this band. Yeah, we've met before. I was like, no, I've never met you. He's like, no, we have. And he really was like, I was like, okay, if you say so. Yeah. But I have done LSD. I don't think I've done as much as you, and you're much older than me. Maybe I'm right about this.
Yeah.
But it was just funny. Like,
it was.
But he used to be at the coffee shop all the time.
He was over there every day, and they had a shot named after him, too. Coffee shot there at Cafe Trieste. I love that place.
It's still one of the best, old school coffee places. I loved going there.
Speaking of tripping, this is a funny story. When me and my girlfriend at the time were moving from one apartment to the other, and we found out we could get Paul's place after he passed, I said, I'll take it sight unseen. I was like, okay, cool. So she went in first to check it out. We were moving from another apartment over on Greenwich Street, not to be confused with New York City, Greenwich, of course. And we get in there, and you'll appreciate this. I go into the bathroom, and I turn the shower on, and it starts shooting lasers, colored lasers. There's a psychedelic shower head powered by water that is shooting lasers into the shower. I was like, this is the greatest. It's
you didn't change it, did you?
No. Of course not.
That would have been
that would have been sacrilege to do that when Paul Kantner lived for so many years, right? Isn't that funny? I thought it was great. I was just...
It'd be much more romantic than, Darby crashed, OD'd in this tub, and I'll never wash this tub again.
Yeah, that would be a little bit... Yeah, exactly. Chris,
we love you, Darby Crash. Yeah. I'm just kidding.
This past tour you did was incredible. I know you've heard this from other people, but, watching you and Rich and the band play again, it was just so great. Your voice sounded incredible every night. And just the swagger, everything about what was going on. It just, for me, you guys were on the top form, top of your game, man.
I feel... I feel for the first time in our career, we were really focused on what the presentation is, what we're doing, and we can enjoy that, and we're not getting in the way of our own selves. I would be the first person to. But by the way, that was I felt as a younger person and running a band, it's easy in hindsight to sit back if you're not the person who's in charge of making the dream come to life, any dream.
Yeah.
Not the dream of success, the dream of you have to create this thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that we could be here after all the stuff. And, again, that's why I think this Shake Your Money Maker, because that's still the plan this year. That was the plan all along, and now we're in different markets. But to celebrate that record, to focus on that, it makes me realize, wow, we were different when we came out. I see where we fit in the lineage, but, we didn't fit in with our generation in the same way. We weren't played on the same stations. We weren't considered I'm not considered the same type of person as all the Seattle singers, even though it's still my generation, which is all perfectly fine, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, it is what it is. But that we could come back and, well, number one, that we can do it at a high level. You know, that our performance can have have that swagger that we've retained that just in a talent way. But that, no matter what Rich and I have been through, there's no, until the bitter end, we're not watering down what we feel rock and roll sounds like just because everyone else has, or because the world is more corporate, or because this is a bit easier and this is the way this is. I mean, I'm still stubbornly going to be the person. I didn't get into a rock band to be like in a talent show. You know what I mean? People in bands, like when we grew up, we were ambitious, but our main ambition was to create something that we felt was authentic to us and what we wanted to say. It doesn't matter what band it is. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, like, in our scene in Atlanta where we grew up, and bands like, Mary My Hope got the record deal before us, Driving and Crying, like there were a lot of bands that were, getting major label attention. And, we were very young.
Yeah.
But to be here and say, yeah, man, like, this whole idea of, like our amps are loud. I played with Jimmy Page. One of my first tours was opening for AC/DC. Those guys are loud.
Yeah, they absolutely are.
What I mean? Like,
those AC/DC tours were incredible.
Loud. And they're not like, and I'm like, that, and that's what I like. And for a while, maybe I had some sort of aversion to it just because of the circumstance and never being able to have any perspective. But the second Rich and I got into a room putting the band together, and like he hit a chord and like the windows blew out like some old tape commercial or something, I was like, yeah. You know what I mean?
The Maxell guy.
Yeah.
Like back.
Everything blows up or whatever.
Back in
I was
his
like,
chair.
but it's special, and it's, again, it almost exists in another dimension at this point.
Yeah.
And I think that's unique to us. I never thought that we would get into a band and be innovators. You know what I mean? We weren't into technology. We weren't into pushing those type of boundaries. But I think we were always into like the most soulful presentation. Our youthfulness was angry too. You know what I mean? So we understood, again, the last maybe licks of maybe if you just make a racket big enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it'll mean something.
Yeah.
To all the great bands that came before us and all the great bands that are playing, and it's just a unique opportunity to have a long career,
Yeah. But yeah, it's been incredible. Just I look at the career and just some of the great tours over the years, the early tours, the Jimmy Page tour, the Oasis tour. I mean, like, just there's so many great shows.
The only band brave enough to tour with Oasis and survived to tell about it,
which was great.
Which was hardly dangerous. We had everyone was on the best behavior. We were like, all of our negativity canceled each other out, and we just had one giant great summer.
Yeah. You guys, I mean, those shows, and you guys got along great, which was
of course. We're still friends. I mean, I don't see them much, but I still have great friends that work for both bands. I'm sure when we run into, I doubt I will run into them together, but when I see them apart, we always have a big laugh. And, yeah, they're fantastic.
It's great. Well, Chris, thanks so much for taking the time to hang out with me again. It's always great to see you. And
thank you, Matt. There's nothing more I like than coming over to Burbank and walking around.
Well, I'm glad we get to talk about music, which I love. I mean, you and I are both guys who love records and love music and love bands.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. And like, there's lots of good stuff going on. Like there's cool bands in Los Angeles. There's young kids. There's like, cool little dirty rock and roll things going on, and great songwriting, and so it's you should always be excited about music. You just might have to dig a little deeper sometimes.
That's it. Well, thanks so much, Chris, for being here.
Right on.
Chris Robinson, everybody, from Black Crows. The new EP is the 1972 EP. I'm Matt Pinfield. This is KLOS New and Approved. We'll see you next time.